Locked on Rockies crossover time as Millard Thomas joins us because he wants to know what the heck are the Rockies doing?
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked on Rockies podcast. I am your host, Paul Holden, bringing you all sorts of Rockies goodness every single day as part of the Locked on Rockies podcast. Rockies fan extraordinaire for 27 years of life. Also working the airwaves here in Seattle, paulfholden.com if you want to see more stuff. We're talking Colorado Rockies baseball 5 days a week here as part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. And we thank you for making us your first listen. We're a little bonus episode, kind of recording multiple times in a day, but we are very excited to be joined by the one, the only Millard Thomas, host of Locked On Diamondbacks. I just realized while we started this, I don't have the little graphic thing in the background. I don't know if that'll be an issue. I don't know if that'll be a problem, but we're just going to keep rolling on.
Okay.
in the meantime, as I just realized that as we went live here. But Millard, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having me on, Paul. Yeah, the graphic thing looks a little weird, but I think we're okay, and we're just gonna keep chugging along here.
I completely spaced it. I'm like, let me host this one as I'm acting as if I'm going to be the prepared one, and yet here we are. How about I'm just gonna do that so it looks a little bit better for us. But you should know Millard by now, honestly, if you've been listening to the podcast for a bit. This isn't our first time that we've chatted together. So, Millard, you had some questions, so let's hit me with it. What do you want to know about the purple pinstripes?
Yes. Well, I first want to get into some Trevor Story action with you first, Paul, because of course woke up to the news yesterday morning seeing Trevor Story finally signed. He was one of the big names still remaining on the block, on the market. And the Red Sox, they were a team rumored the last week or so that they might be in on Trevor Story. I just never thought it was going to materialize just because I thought he was a better fit elsewhere, Yankees or whatever. But now seeing Trevor Story officially no longer a Rocky, heading over to the Red Sox, 6 years, 140. What were your first thoughts when you saw Story leaving? Because I'm sure you've been expecting this day for a while now, Paul.
Yeah, as much of it was a bummer that they couldn't figure things out, and the 1% to 5% hope that I held that Trevor Story might come back, because as the offseason was going on, I was kind of starting to sit there like, this is getting weird. But with Correa not signing until just right before Trevor Story, as well as Freddie Freeman and stuff, it kind of not that shocking anymore when I look at it. As disappointed as I am, I'm kind of just glad we know he's not in the division, and thank God he's going into the American League. They're not going to have to deal with it. And I think Boston got a heck of a player, and I was never for him changing positions, but I think if you're going to have him switch a position, playing something like second base makes a heck of a lot more sense than third base or the outfield. I think that's going to be a more natural fit for Trevor Story to go in there, and I think he's going to have an impact on that Red Sox lineup. I'm glad he got to go to a contender, and I'm glad the Rockies decided to at least go out and say, hey, Trevor, we got Kris Bryant. The door is open. So as much as it's a tough pill to swallow, like you mentioned, something we expected, something we saw, I'm just glad it didn't end up being I'm glad it wasn't the Giants like it was being said there kind of late, and I'm certainly glad it wasn't the Dodgers. It's a bummer for Rockies fans, but it was one we all saw coming, and even the players saw coming as well. Most of them have, I think, been quoted. I know at least Ryan McMahon has been quoted as saying they saw the writing on the wall with Trevor Story. So, at this point, it's just kind of like, all right, we knew it was coming. Now the Band-Aid is officially ripped off.
Yeah, the Giants would have been interesting just because it would have been like a swapping of your guys' two stars basically from last season. But What do we know any of the reported contracts offered to Trevor Story by the Rockies in, the last couple months during this lockout? Because I thought I saw one story today saying the Rockies were willing to pay more, at least as much as the Red Sox paid for Trevor Story, but Trevor Story just did not want to return to the Rockies.
Yeah, that's I believe the Rockies were doing something that was similar. I saw that as well. Story was the Rockies. Story's longtime team was willing to pay more than the 140 million he got. This was from John Heyman on Twitter. There, however, Story said to see Boston as a better chance to win. So,
Of course.
Story valued the mix up, and it kind of makes sense. Honestly, I just think it was a big stretch for Trevor Story to stick it out after what had happened with the Nolan trade, and then how the trade deadline went, and then John Gray situation, and then another change in terms of front office. I'm glad the Rockies stayed engaged as long as they did to at least try. That's something that I do like, but I can't blame Trevor for sitting there and saying, you know what, that ship has sailed, and it makes total sense now. Now the Rockies really can embrace this new Kris Bryant led identity. Like now it's Kris Bryant's team. You know what I mean? There's no lingering as much as it hurts Rockies fans, and as much as it's a bummer that core that was in the playoffs, they're really not here anymore. All those pieces are either, not in the game on other teams, or they're Charlie Blackmon, who's apparently still going to play right field. So that's kind of where it's at. And it's a little refreshing. I don't know. I hate to use that word, but it's over.
Ooh.
You know what I mean? In terms of it's I'm not sitting here. What if I'm not we know that he's gone. We know the Rockies tried. We know that it was about winning. So now, I mean, that the Rockies have to answer the call of, are they actually a winning team like Kris Bryant says they are, and like they told Trevor Story they were going to be, or is Trevor Story on it where the organization is not suited to win?
Yeah, because we'll talk about Kris Bryant a little bit in segment number 2, because I definitely felt like he was going for a little bit of a cash grab, which I'm okay with. So we'll talk about that in segment number 2 a little bit. But how do you feel about the contract that Trevor Story did accept to with the Boston Red Sox? Like an annual average salary of like 23 million a year. Do you feel like that was fair value for Trevor Story? The Rockies are saying they would have paid as much or more, but as as a fan of the team, if you were the GM of the Rockies, would you have been comfortable giving that contract to Trevor Story?
Yeah. I think Trevor Story was criminally undervalued this offseason. I think he's going to be successful. I don't know if he's going to be the best version ever again, but to go in a hitter-friendly ballpark against some AL East pitching that I think he's going to be able to feast on. Trevor Story gets to hit at Fenway and at Yankee Stadium a lot of the time now. I think it's a great deal for the Red Sox, and I would have no problem paying Trevor Story $25 million a year if I could lock him down for 6 years, especially when you're looking at the Red Sox. And here's how it goes. You either have Trevor Story work out at second base, and him and Xander Bogaerts become a great tandem, and Xander Bogaerts is able to keep him around, and you're able to keep both of them, and you have a great middle of the infield. Xander Bogaerts and you don't work out on a deal, bam, you just shift Trevor Story over. You got a shortstop for 5 more seasons, and then you can work on something like second base, which I think is an easier position to get someone more accustomed to, or train or build someone up, versus shortstop. I find shortstop to be an incredibly valuable position, especially on defense. And I think that that's it. Trevor Story was great as a defender. Everyone just looks at this bad year that he had, both on offense and defense, because he really struggled. He didn't have his best year, but he still was the Rockies' best player in terms of WAR, wins above replacement last year, even on a down year, multiple errors, and the low offensive production, as well as the injury. So yeah, I easily would pay the contract for Trevor Story, and I'm not surprised to hear the Rockies offered him more. But that's, I think Trevor Story was looking at it, it's like, I could probably earn a little bit more that extra between contracts, being more in the national stage if I'm able to break out. Trevor Story will make more money, the difference in the contracts, if he becomes a face of the Red Sox, which is a little bit more national recognition than being the face of the Colorado Rockies.
Yeah, we got a wave by Locked On Yankees. What's up, Locked On Yankees? How you
What's
doing out there?
up?
Sorry, Trevor Story stole your player, but yeah, Trevor Story. I think the main reason the Red Sox got him for the reasons you said in terms of being insurance for Xander Bogaerts. I think that's the most important thing because the Red Sox all of a sudden have been kind of cheap with their homegrown superstars. We saw the Mookie Betts trade a couple years ago. They brought in the guy
Right.
from Tampa Bay to run their front office. So I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if they let Xander Bogaerts walk in free agency because I think he's going to command a contract greater than what Trevor Story just got. He'll probably get closer to somewhere in between like what Corey Seager and Carlos Correa got, I guess, this past free agency. But do you think playing in Coors Field is like the main reason people were like trepidatious to give Story a big contract just because they didn't know? Because the splits are definitely favored toward Coors Field, but it's not like he's a bum if you take him out of that stadium.
I'd say the reason it took this long for Trevor Story to go and the narrative of Trevor Story not being as kind of big and boisterous was more due to the decline in defense this year and the elbow issues versus a down year in terms of offense and hitting at Coors Field. You look at Trevor Story, especially if you were an AL East team, and you say, I want that guy batting here no matter what, because Trevor Story is going to hit well in all of those ballparks. All of those ballparks are going to suit for Trevor Story. I think people were more concerned about his ability to play shortstop and his willing and his. I think pre-lockout, he was probably more in the mindset of, I am a shortstop. I am playing shortstop for your team. That is what I want to do. And then the lockout happened, all this stuff. And then the beginning, the free agency stuff, the pieces start falling. Players start going in different directions. Even the veterans, the Rockies pick up a Jose Iglesias, for example, where they're starting to pad out their plan. Because I do think in the back of Trevor Story's mind was if he didn't get a good deal, a 6-year, 20 plus million a year deal from a team like the Red Sox, I think taking a dump truck full of cash from the Rockies was still an option for Trevor Story at some point. But I think it was more the focus and the emphasis on Trevor Story as a shortstop versus Trevor Story being a Coors Field product, because anyone wants that guy in their lineup to bring a pop. Because if he can cut back on the strikeouts and things that he increased on, it seemed like he kind of regressed on this past year, he's going to be back to his normal self of mashing baseballs and really good defense. And yeah, and like I said, I'm glad he's staying in the infield and especially in the middle of the infield, because I think that's where it is. But if I was a GM this offseason looking at Trevor Story, my concerns more would have been the injury and the shortstop aspects. Can I fit that into my team versus his offense? That's the thing I'm not doubting at all.
Yeah, he's coming off a little bit of a down season, but I think the fact that they've had so much of a talent drain the last couple of years, I think there's just more pressure on him in the lineup. Pitchers are pitching to him differently. He's now the main guy on the scouting report. So I think part of that with the elbow injuries you mentioned this season, I'm pretty confident in that Red Sox lineup. Trevor Story is going to put up all-star numbers once again and look like the all-star we've seen in the past. So if I had to go somewhere and bet on Trevor Story making the all-star team in 2022, do you know where I would go, Paul, for that?
I got the number one spot, Millard. I'm talking the number one spot for all your future MLB futures bets. If you want to get in there, we did a whole episode already. I'm curious. They have the Rockies at a 68.5 win total. Our friends at BetOnline. I thought that was a little low. I'm not going to lie, but if you want to bet on MLB futures, all the college basketball action still going on, BetOnline is the place for you. It's the number one spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And like we said, it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. Multiple MLB future lines are available at BetOnline right now. So if you want to get in on the MLB betting action, you can do so at BetOnline. Head to the website today. Use that mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Millard, you are thinking this Kris Bryant move is a Kris Bryant cash grab. You're not buying into him saying that the Rockies are a winning team, that he only goes to winners, that he saw that this team is going to be a competitive one. What do you so that's your immediate takeaway from the Bryant deal, huh?
Yeah, I just don't get it. I don't love the deal overall. If it was more of a short-term deal, I think I would have been fine. But 7 years for a guy that I feel like has started to decline a little bit over the last couple seasons. I'm just not in love with it. But more my overall question to you, Paul, is what's the overall game plan or strategy here by the Colorado Rockies? Because I just don't understand the direction they're going in after, the countless discussions about how they just moved off Nolan Arenado. No one liked the value that they got back for him, and they're still paying him. Then you let Trevor Story just walk in free agency when you could have signed him or when you could have traded him at the deadline. And now you're going out there and you're paying a back for Kris Bryant. Like, good for you for their all-star to your team. And now you don't have, no one that fans don't want to pay tickets for. But I just don't understand the overall game plan here. Like, you could have just had Arenado, you could have had Story, and then you could have gone out there and signed Kris Bryant this offseason. Now, if you're coming back next season with those three as the main contributors in your lineup, as a Rockies fan, I'm sure you would be feeling good. But as of right now, could you feel any better heading into next season as you just came away from this past year?
I feel better because the roster is in a better place than it was last week for the 2022 Colorado Rockies.
Okay, yeah.
Now, is this the path that I would have taken? Is this something that I would have done? No, I would have kept the core of the people that you developed and brought that in. But what I'm learning and kind of starting to look through more on Twitter and things like that is it sounds like Dick Monfort had more control over the team than I thought last year. I thought when the team appointed Bill Schmidt as the interim GM, I figured that was the start of Bill Schmidt's tenure really there, with him calling the shots with not making the moves at the deadline, keeping the team together and navigating the offseason. But it sounds like Dick Monfort might have been more involved than we think in terms of team operation this past year. That includes a committee approach to the trade deadline last year instead of having Bill Schmidt run and have his identity and plan for that. I think this is now Bill Schmidt coming out and saying, hey, this is my version of the team. Unfortunately, there's nothing that he's really going to be able to say because it wasn't technically his call to do the Arenado trade. The moving, it sounds like it wasn't really up to him about the trade deadline and moving John Gray and Trevor Story. And it sounds like up until we started signing Senza and Crone and Ryan McMahon today, they actually were letting Bill Schmidt be the GM. So I think this was a move that the Rockies, they've always liked Kris Bryant. I've learned more about the Rockies have loved Kris Bryant from apparently as far back as 2013. They have been interested in his ability. And he brings a presence that is going to help this Rockies team. He is someone that has been an MVP, won a World Series. That there is value in that. But it's the first piece in hopefully one of many. And Bill Schmidt even said that today is, we brought Brian in, and I'm paraphrasing here. This wasn't, but he said something along the lines of, the foundation is here. We have good pieces, but we're not there yet, which is honestly great to hear. That means the team is wanting to build later on. And that's what you're doing by re-signing Ryan McMahon for a 6-year contract, re-signing Senzatella, re-signing Crone, re-signing Elias Diaz, re-signing Herman Marquez. I mean, those are all good pieces to have on your team. And if Kris Bryant can even get back to close to what he was, he's going to be a major contributor for this Rockies team. So I think this move was to just say, this is a new identity Colorado Rockies. The door is shut, and I'm sorry, the Arenado, Story, Gray, Rockies era, DJ era is done. It's officially done, it's kind of my third. I've been thinking the whole time after it. It's my third great what if of Rockies. What if Red Sox didn't win? Or the Indians won the 2007 American League Championship Series? What if Troy Tulowitzki didn't get hurt all the time? And now it's what if we didn't trade Nolan Arenado and kept that core and added a Kris Bryant? Because you're right, the Rockies would be much better with Arenado, Story, and Bryant. If you're willing to pay the money for Story and Bryant, why weren't you willing to do that before? But again, this is a new GM, so it could be that Bill Schmidt was able to convince Monfort that we are gonna have to pay these type of players a high salary, a high contract to bring him in. And there is, I think Bryant did too, look a little bit to get, I think he probably fought for that extra, more of the length of the deal than maximum money, because but what better place to get your offense back than 50th, 20th and Blake and you mash at Coors Field. I don't like him in left field though. I don't think that's a good move. I think putting him in right, letting him hit, and letting your other people that have played the outfield. I'm very worried about him learning the outfield in Coors Field. That is going to be a tough thing for him to do. But above all, like when I sum it all up, I really think this was just Bill Schmidt saying, I am trying to create this next, hopefully competitive contention window team, and it starts with Kris Bryant.
Well, do you actually have any confidence that this front office can build a team like that? Just because historically, when you look at teams that have their owner with as much say and power that the Rockies do, like it's a lot of cooks in the kitchen to have your GM over here doing one thing, trying to make trades, and then always having to talk to the owner first, and then your owner having to not talk to anyone and being able to just pull off moves on his own end. And then all of a sudden the GM is like, yo, what's going on here? Like trades and signings are going on. I'm not even sure who's on our team anymore. It just feels like there's a lot of moving pieces with that Rockies front office. And like one of the reasons why I said they were delusional with Ben Caspick of Locked On Rockies or Locked On Giants is because like Dick Monfort just keeps saying, we're ready to win. We're trying to win. And it just seems like their team is nowhere near the landscape of winning. They're nowhere near the promised land, the playoffs. And it just feels like the Rockies are trying to maybe speed up the process, or just, I don't think they really understand the process. Like, how much confidence do you have in this front office? Because right now, with the things I hear from Dick Monfort and the things I'm seeing, I don't love what the Rockies are doing. And also, I guess if you just want to tie this into, I don't love Bud Black either. I mean, I'm sure I don't have to tell you this, but over 14 years of doing the research from like who's ranking the managers in the NL West, I didn't realize he's he's been in the league 14 years, only 2 playoff appearances, never won more than 91 games as a manager. I just found that really interesting that he's been in baseball that long, and his career win-loss record is below 500.
Yeah, manager stuff. I don't know how important is. I think Bud is a good players manager. I think he is a manager that has a good can keep a clubhouse and keep a good vibe in the clubhouse and a good energy. But it is. I don't know. Could someone else do a better job? I don't think it's on Bud Black that the offense has underperformed, even with Arenado and Story on the team. The Rockies have underperformed offensively for a long, long time now. That's really been the issue since the starting position, or the starting pitching rose to the occasion with, led by Herman, and that rotation actually being a strength of the Rockies instead of a detriment as it was in the past. As for confidence, it grows. I mean, I can't sit here and say that I'm completely dejected by a team that went out and got one of the biggest names in free agency. I mean, Kris Bryant, a lot of teams would have wanted Kris Bryant on their team. I think that is safe to say. And for him to go and choose the Rockies, for him to sign and commit that long, I think that, yeah, the money for sure. Let's be honest, but there is something there for the Rockies to spend more in free agency than they have in what felt like decades. Honestly, at this point, they've spent, I believe, with re-signing players included, I think they've spent something. I saw a tweet of around $334 million this offseason. Again, this is all why are we doing this now? But it is Bill Schmidt. That's the big thing, is Jeff Bridich isn't running this team. I don't think Jeff Bridich re-signs Crone, Senzatella, McMahon, and Marquez, and Elias Diaz. I mean, Bridich was in charge, I believe, for the Marquez and the Diaz deal, because those, I believe, were 2019. But I don't think he brings back everybody like that and really sees some of that stuff. And so I am cautiously optimistic, because I do like the Rockies. It could have been better, but for where it was, I feel like the offseason wasn't horrible. And I think that the Rockies are in a better position now because of the things that of the players that they've brought in than they were, again, a week ago. Would I like Kris Bryant and Trevor Story? Yes, of course. But, if Iglesias can hit for contact and bat 285 with a decent slash, I know I'm asking for a lot. I'm more worried about his defense. I mean, if there is a bounce back, I'm not sitting here and saying the Rockies are a couple players away from the World Series, but if they did have a couple better pieces, and if some of their outfield plans and prospects pan out, I mean, they're going to fill these holes with some players, with having some seasoned vets that the Rockies, if their plan works, could be better. But I'm not getting overly excited, but I, like we mentioned in the read earlier, I think having the Rockies at 68.5 wins is far too low. I think that's sleeping on the Rockies too bad. I'm saying at most, I'm confident in a 73 to 75 win season. And if everything goes well and the Rockies can steal some series, they'll flirt in that 80 win range, but that's if they're as good as they were at home last year, if not better, plus being honestly just marginally better than on the road because they were historically bad on the road. So, but Devin here in our chat, he's got full confidence with Bill Schmidt as our new GM. Momford is cool, but I hope he opens up the wallet some more. Devin, I've learned a little more pro of the front office than myself because again, we've been burned
Devin's
time and time again. If there actually is a competitive foundation here, I do hope that it is not. I hope that there's activity at the deadline. You have far too many outfielders in your system. Let's move them to beef up the bullpen that needs some help. Let's open up and let's go out and try to convince another contact bat to come in here and play. The Rockies are not in the same position as I'd say like the Orioles and things like that because the Rockies don't ever want to tear down completely. That's the other thing. They don't want to embrace and say rebuild because they want to have someone like Kris Bryant to have people still excited to come in and fill the seats. But let's be real, when half the games, are California teams and the California teams fill up the stadium anyway because they all moved to Colorado. You don't have to worry about that as much. But I am cautiously optimistic, but I can't sit here and say that there wasn't at least a step in the right direction from the Rockies. Bill Schmidt this offseason. Again, I know it kind of sounds weird just because it's masked in the but losing John Gray sucks, not being able to get something with Trevor Story. But the Trevor Story thing, you kind of saw coming. The John Gray one is really the biggest question mark I have. I think that one's going to be the biggest thing that bites the Rockies in the butt this year. Hopefully, who the Rockies signed maybe can get John Gray level, production out. I again, if you're going to dump truck that money, just pay what Texas was going to pay John Gray. And I bet you he would have signed back with the Rockies. And then you wouldn't have to worry about that. You got your rotation that you've loved for years. So I'm cautiously optimistic, but I'm not going to get ahead of myself yet. I need to see more. But the Rockies have re-signed the right players for deals that I think are good. And I can't sit here and hate on the Kris Bryant deal because the Rockies got a good player. And that makes it better for me as someone who covers the team and should make fans feel at least a little bit more excited that someone does have the potential to come and hit 30 home runs for the team this year.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I still don't love the idea of my owner making a lot of my personnel decisions for me. I mean, I look at like
and
Jim
that's the other
Buxton.
thing. Monfort is it is a Monfort's club. He promotes his son. It's Bill Schmidt's been in the organization. They didn't like the guy that came in to do the analytics. He didn't even make it 7 months. That stuff still sucks. And I'm giving more credit to Bill Schmidt, and it sounds like Clint Hurdle might be more involved in some of this stuff too. I forgot that he was involved with the Rockies on an organizational side now, but than I am Dick Monfort. But it is nice at least knowing that the wallet got opened up for potentially 2 superstars. So if the Rockies do find themselves somewhat competitive at the trade deadline with this expanded, I think the Rockies got to love expanded playoffs. I don't think they got any chance at sniffing the division or anything like that. But crazy things happen in baseball, and the Rockies are going to be fighting for those extended. I think there's an argument that the Rockies, if everything goes well, if everyone plays up to a potential, they might sniff the extended wild card if everything goes well. But you got a lot of matchups with the Dodgers and the Giants. And even with my positives and pros of feeling on the lineup, you're still going up against LA and San Francisco most of the year. But so what's is that really, are you really competing with those teams right now? It's like, nah, I don't think so.
Yeah, probably not. I definitely like the expanded playoffs as a D-backs fan. The Kris Bryant deal, probably 7 years is a little too long for me. I think I'm okay with the money. I just feel like it'll be an albatross kind of contract by the end of it, just because I really do feel like he's not the same guy we saw those first 3 years where he was like an MVP his second year in baseball.
Well, I mean, remember it was Kris Bryant or Nolan Arenado. I mean, that was literally the whole talk in the NL for most of the time, and now the Rockies get to hopefully get still a good amount from them. I mean, it'll be really, really interesting to see. But Millard, if you need, we're talking pieces, right? We're talking about having the right things in the right situation, and I got the place for you if you need to get something for your car or truck, and that's at Rock Auto. Millard, you got to be with me here. You hate going into the store and just having someone just look up something on the computer. Is that anything more frustrating in the modern shopping day experience than someone using the computer for you?
Oh, nothing.
Yeah. So skip the hassle, save the time, save the energy, and save 30%, 50%, even 100% more for the same parts from a car chain store or car dealership when you use Rock Auto. Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years, and their prices are reliably low for every customer. Go explore the easy-to-use website today to find the solution to your auto parts needs. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. You can write Locked On in there. How did you hear about us box so they know that we sent you. Helps us out if you do that, folks. So we'd love if you do that. So when you go, get everything you need for your car or truck, like brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, and even new carpet. You can head to rockauto.com. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. Millard, just to kind of put a bow on our conversation here, and we, because we talked a lot of Rockies, so I got to at least get a little. What is your outlook for the Diamondbacks in 2022? I haven't heard a lot from them. Are the Diamondbacks going to be in the same position as they were last year? And is that part of the plan?
Do you have the BetOnline projected wins up? Do you have the graphic up?
I will get that for you right now. I looked
I
at it
actually
this
don't know where the
morning, and I
D-backs
believe
are.
they were one of few teams, one of, I think, 3 teams with lower win totals than the Rockies. I believe. Let me get you that. MLB.
Okay, well, I'm gonna come out here on the podcast and say we're gonna finish better than the Rockies in the NL West. I can't go farther than that. We're still gonna be either 4 or 5 in the division. We'll probably be right around where the Rockies are. I mean, if we finish 5th, that wouldn't surprise me either. But I'm gonna go out today. What's today's date? I don't even know. March 21st. I thought it was like the 15th or something. March 21st. I'm gonna say the D-backs are gonna finish no higher than 4th in the division and no lower than 4th in the division. They're gonna be smack dab at 4 because we got Mark the Shark Melanson, stolen from the NL West rivals San Diego Padres. We're bringing back an old friend. Ian Kennedy was top 5 in Cy Young voting back in 2011. I know that's over a decade ago, but he's back. He's a closer now, so he's changed his game up a little bit. And overall, I think we traded for Jordan Luplow. Nice platoon bat. We'll see. Everyone that has him is always left a little disappointed. I'm sure D-backs fans will be happy. He's probably our 3rd most talented player in the lineup. We'll see. But overall, if we get a healthy Zach Gallen, he might miss the start of the season. The year's not starting off great. But if we get a Zach Gallen at least 90% of the season, Ketel Marte 9% of the season, Dalton Varsho continues that second half breakout, we could be looking at a team around 65 wins next season, Paul. So I'm really excited for this D-back squad. 75 wins. I mean, anywhere between 70 and 80 wins is a World Series caliber season as a D-backs fan. At this point, Devin says, I'm sorry, you guys are finishing 5th. We'll see, Devin. I don't like the Rockies team that much. We'll see what happens. I still believe we got a better player in Ketel Marte than Kris Bryant. And I believe Zach Allen's a better starter than anyone the Rockies have. But this is really a me and Devin conversation right now, Paul. I'm sorry. That wasn't really directed at you. Sorry that you
Nah, it's all right. I gotta, so your BetOnline totals for futures right now are sitting at the line is 66.5 wins. Oof. That is 2 wins lower than the Rockies. I think you're crazy. I think the Rockies are in a much better position than the Diamondbacks. I think German Marquez is a certified stud and has a potential to be a top 5 arm in the entire National League, if not all of baseball this year. I think German Marquez saw how close he was to being a top tier pitcher last year in that stretch that he had heading into the All-Star break, and he's going to excel. I think the starting pitching of the Rockies is underappreciated. I'm interested to see if I feel so bad. I was saying the name wrong, but Alex Colome, I believe.
I think it's Colome.
Colome, yeah, Colome. It'd be interesting. He is probably the Rockies' closer, as they brought him in with that. With that mindset, shifting Daniel Bard back into a role. Some young arms were really impressive for the Rockies at the end. And plus, I can't sit here and hate on the Kris Bryant thing until he goes out there and starts underperforming at somewhere. I am nervous about him playing left field. I am nervous about Charlie Blackmon playing in right, but I got more confidence in the Rockies hitting a 70+ win season than I do the Diamondbacks. But I know what we are guaranteed for with Rockies and Diamondbacks this season is a bunch of 8-7, 3 home runs from each team. It's just going to be a ton of slobber knockers, because that's always seems to be the case when the Rockies and the Diamondbacks match up.
They're at least good games. I mean, they usually maybe go extras a couple of times, usually go into the 7th or 8th inning. Someone's got to get a little rally going. So they're usually fun series. It just only fun to us, really. No one else in baseball is
Yeah,
watching those
we're
games.
still fighting. It's definitely a fight for 4th and 5th between these two teams. But who knows? I think the Padres are overrated, as we saw last year. But
Yeah.
that's for a different podcast and a different host. We're going to wrap things up here on this crossover. I know I didn't have the cool crossover stuff, but Millard's a graphic wizard. So I'm
I
going
might
to
do a
assume
post.
when he posted on his end,
Yeah.
it'll probably look a lot better than when I posted
Might have to
on
do
my
some
end.
work post-production a little bit.
But Millard, where can everyone go to stay up to date with
Yes.
you and the Diamondbacks all season long?
At Creator Thomas 24 for my personal account, or just type in Locked On Diamondbacks on both Twitter and Instagram for the search or for the podcast handle.
We're back in action, 5 podcasts a week here on the Locked On MLB podcast.
Man.
So you got your Diamondbacks and Rockies talk coming 5 days a week throughout the season and more. I'm Paul Holden. You can find me at Paul Holden 33 and at LO Rockies. Subscribe to Locked On Rockies and Locked On Diamondbacks on YouTube so you can get the video podcast and instant reactions when things go down in the world of baseball. And as opening day is closer and closer, this will not be the last time we talk. Millard, thank you again so much for your time.
Oh, thank you, sir.